So my goal for today is just to go over all of the settings and show you how you can customize your EZFluence settings to automate your 3D plans even more. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So what we're gonna do is just launch straight into the admin setting, and we'll start up in the top left under initial goals, and we'll kind of work our way through this whole thing. So for the max default setting, I have it set for me at 115. Now, however you have it set, this isn't a setting where it says, okay, EZFluence, give me a plan with a 115 hotspot. To look at this setting, let's look at under the hood a little bit of what EZFluence is doing. So when you initially launch EZFluence, it's always going to try to get 100% coverage to the midline of the plan. So let's take a breast, for example. It's going to try to get 100% coverage to that midline of the breast and give you the lowest hotspot. It usually starts out around 102. If it can't get that 100% coverage to the 102 with a max dose of 102, then it goes up to 103, checks to see if it gets coverage, and then so on and so forth. And when then it finally gets to coverage goal, that's the hotspot you're going to get. So you're most likely going to see plans between 105 and 107, but sometimes you'll get a little hotter. Now this setting here, the 115, says, okay, EZFluence, continue to get that cover, try to get that coverage, but stop when you get to 115 because I am not going to allow anything higher than 115. So stop there. And so that's your max dose default goal. Users do have the ability to add another goal. And I see this in cases, maybe a physician, you have multiple physicians and each physician has a different constraint on the max dose. So I could enter 120. And I also see this in cases, maybe partial breast plans where that max dose can get a little hotter and that's allowable for the partial breast plans, for example. Now I'm gonna have two max dose settings here. I'm gonna save this and we'll jump back into Eclipse rather and see how that is going to affect our EZFluence plan. When you add a max default goal, it prompts you asking you which goal are you trying to achieve, the 115 or the 120. From there, you select the goal that you want to achieve, and you also have the ability to customize your max dose as well. And then you hit OK, and it launches into your normal EZFluence planning window. For the next setting, machine MLC models. So this is for clinics that don't always use blocks in their field. Machine MLC models, when you have this loaded and entered, you can launch EZFluence without any MLCs. And I have a plan to show you. So open field, I do need dose calculated, but again, I don't need any MLCs or blocks. And I'm gonna go ahead and launch EZFluence and show you it can launch without those MLCs. And the way it can do that is because of that setting. And from here, you're gonna see your normal ecomp plan, and then you can go ahead and generate your field and field, and EZFluence knows exactly which MLC model to use. So you can have different max segments set. You don't always have to use you can change that here. So if you find yourself constantly changing the max field segments, either higher or lower, or same thing with the minimum mono units per segment. For the always generate field and field by default setting, the best way to explain this is I'll kind of step back a little bit and tell you exactly how EZFluence kind of was built for. So it was built to initially launch and plans using ecomp, your sliding window technique. Okay, in this technique, you have a lot bigger variety of plans to choose from, and it's a lot easier to manipulate plans and isodose lines and modulation and optimization in ecomp. Now, that's the way it was built, but you do have the option to always generate a field and field upon launching EZFluence. I will provide a warning with that. You're not going to get as good of dosimetry on your plans with the field and field segments initially launched, but you can launch that and you won't get the variation you get with ecomp. For the Electa machines, you can choose to enable the jaw tracking. This just allows the jaws to cone down with the apertures per segment. So you have that option to enable or disable the jaw tracking here. For the leaf sequencer priorities, if your EZFluence is working normally there's no reason to make any changes here unless really this is only for upgrade of Eclipse versions rather, or if you were to get a new LMC calculator, this is where you make that change. For the general settings, if you have versions 15 or lower, you know that you need to export your plan into a default directory that EZFluence already has set up. But if you would like to change that default export directory, you can do that here. You just go ahead and browse, and then you find your default directory, and then EZFluence will always send it to that directory, and then you pick it up again in Eclipse and import it. For target aliases, now EZFluence when launched, if this is default at nothing, EZFluence will always use your PTV eval as your target structure. Now, if I want, let's say physicians always has the nomenclature PTV or breast contour, and you're always changing the target in EZFluence to that structure, you can come in here and change that target alias to something that you always have as your target. In my case, I have a structure called tumor bed. So you can see down here, instead of PTV eval being the target, it now uses the tumor bed. For the boost structure, same thing. I'm gonna go ahead and put tumor bed in here because it's relevant to this case. I'm gonna go ahead and save, jump back into Eclipse, run EZFluence. Now it's gonna prompt me, what would you like your total dose to be to, I call it the base plan, and you can, make your changes here or keep it the prescription. And then for your tumor structure, I'm gonna add another 1,000. So automatically EZFluence knows that there's a boost structure in my plan, and we're going to be using the SIB technique or the SIB tool, simultaneous integrated boost tool, and it's going to automatically generate both the base plan and the SIB treatment all in one. For avoid structure aliases, EZFluence is always going to avoid structures lung, liver, and heart. You can add, as I did here, a rib or any other structures you seem to be adding for the PTV eval structure to avoid. So kind of to reiterate that, PTV eval structure, when built, will avoid lung, liver, and heart. And if you want to add a structure like rib, it will avoid that structure when building the PTV eval easy. For the body structure aliases, instead of using body, you use something like exterior or skin. You can enter that parameter here in the body structure alias. For the adding 1 cm border to exported fluence, I'll go ahead and launch another plan here. When we add 1 cm border to the exported fluence plans, this only has to do with ecomp plans. If I were to export this fluence, right now it would just keep these same blocks, but if I had the parameter add another cm border to the exported fluence, then it would add another cm to this fluence when we export it. For the show RTOG 1005 constraint, EZFluence always displays this RTOG constraints column here. If you don't like to see that or it's not important to you, you can always turn it off in the settings right here. Default to use Eclipse relative field weights for multi-angle plans. Now this is for instances where we don't have coplanar beams and maybe we have a plan that is multi-field. So I have a 4-field lung pulled up here, and when this is selected, EZFluence is going to use the field weighting that you have provided for it and launch into the planning part. Now when it's unchecked, either way, EZFluence is going to prompt you asking you, okay, which fields would you like modulated? And at the top here, you can do it on the fly as well. Use current field weights. When I select this, EZFluence is going to keep all of these field weightings down here the same, but still modulate all these fields. Now when it's unchecked, EZFluence will choose its own weighting and give you the best plan of what it thinks the weighting should be. So that's why I have it unchecked here. For the always maximize less than 105, so there's this button below the CT slices here, maximize less than 105. When EZFluence launches, as I have it now, it's not maximizing. So it's trying to get still the best coverage, but when you click on this button, what EZFluence is going to do is going to try to peg this 105 so it doesn't get any more volume in there, but increase overall coverage. So you're going to see your 102, 103, 104 increase. And that's what this maximize less than 105. So you can choose to do that on the fly, or you can choose to always have EZFluence do that when it launches. For WARN users of 10x ecomp, For some clinics, they want to be warned if a 10x is being used for ecomp due to neutron contamination. So you can always have it warn you when exporting that plan with anything 10x or above. For locking CT slice to transverse view, there's two different options in EZFluence to look at the CT slice. Right now, we're showing the transverse view, and above that, there's this button, Show Beamlet View. So now we're looking at the beamlet view. So I'm gonna go ahead and explain what that beamlet view is in my little diagram here. So this right here is transverse. This is the way the CT was made. It's taking direct transverse slices. But for beamlet view, we're looking at the beam ray slice here. So these blue lines represent the beamlet view. And that's what we would be looking at here, beamlet view. For display gray instead of cine-gray, I think that's pretty explanatory, self-explanatory. The default optimization distance from OARs. Now let's jump back into EZFluence and show you the fluence here. For the setting of 0, EZFluence is going to optimize 0 cm away from any OARs. Now you can change it on the fly. So up here in the gear icon, I can change it actually based on per field. I have it setting at 0. If I put 5, which is the max, I apply setting, EZFluence is going to re-optimize and give me a new plan where the optimization takes place 5 cm away from any OARs. So the plan looks just a little bit different. For breast plans, you're not going to see a big change, but for other plans where the fields aren't so symmetric, then you would notice a greater difference. For the default number of pixels to extrapolate fluence, so when EZFluence optimizes, EZFluence goes 4 pixels in, grabs that fluence, and then extrapolates it out towards the field edge, so you get that fluence. That's how we get fluence out here. And that's can also be done on the fly, but this is where that setting is done. 4 pixels, if I choose 3, it goes 3 pixels into the body and extrapolates it out towards the field edge. For the field edge, if I change it to 4, EZFluence goes 4 from the field edge here. It counts 1, 2, 3, 4 pixels in, grabs that fluence and extrapolates it out back towards the field edge, and that's how we get fluence in this region. So you can do that on the fly, or you can set your parameter in here. For calc point recommendations, EZFluence is always going to give you a calc point. It's going to recommend a calc point. If you have versions 15 and lower, you have to copy that calc point and re-enter it in Eclipse. So here's my calc point. If I want to export those, that needs to be done in version 15. So you have to have version 15 for that point to be automatically exported back to Eclipse, and you can here rename it. EZFluence will also give you a normalization point if you want. Where those points are or how they're selected is EZFluence chooses a location that is 1 at close to the 100% isodose line, and then 2, not on any large dose gradients or Hansfeld unit gradients, and then 3, it tries to put it in an open location where all the fields behave well for field and fields, so that that point will pass in clear calc or rad calc or whatever your secondary check is. Again, EZFluence will export those planes back if you want, and you can also have a point per subfield exported back to Eclipse if you choose, if that's what your clinic does. For the all-in-one 3 and 4 field breast options, you can have it sent back in different ways. So you can have everything sent back into one plan, so everything is under the same plan. You can have it here in the second radial button. You can have it your tangents separate from your superclav and PAB. So in turn, you have 2 plans, and then the last one you can have each individual plan separated in its own individual plan. So you have your tangents in one plan, PAB in another, and superclav. So in turn, you have 3 plans total. For mixed energy settings, I like to always be prompted on which fields I would like optimized, but you can, if your clinic only allows that lower energy to be optimized, you can always have it select that, so it's a little more automated. Now keep in mind here, when you select this and you send a 10x and a 15x, EZFluence will always choose the lower energy. It's not always 6x, it's just the lower of the 2. Same thing with the high. If you have a 15 and an 18, it's always going to choose that 18x to optimize. And then you can always choose to generate all fluence. So this is just a way if you want to streamline, your clinic's always the same, you can streamline that process. For normalization settings, I like to always have EZFluence select the normalization, tell me what it thinks is the best plan, and then I can change the parameter from there. But you can also choose to always normalize to a certain percentage. That way you always get the same max dose or the same dose coverage on your plans. No normalization will just give you a bunch of plans that have differing hotspots and differing coverage. For the dose color wash settings, I like to show this one, so I'm gonna go ahead and show you the difference. So right now we have every renormalization, EZFluence is going to choose 100 as the low color wash, and it'll change with a normalization or optimization. Show isodose lines. I like to show isodose lines. If you uncheck this, it'll show you the color wash. All right, for the PTV eval settings. Now, you can always default how the PTV eval is built, and so you can change it to always be that default setting, or you can always choose to change it on the fly. For the jaw movement, I like to always be prompted. If EZFluence wants to move the jaws, I usually lock them, but you do have the option to change it on the fly if you're always prompted. But if you constantly, use one of these, you can select it as default, and then you don't have to mess with that. So I will review each one of those independently. So again, the always prompt, it'll prompt you, asking you how you would like to move the jaws. For the minimize jaw movement, the minimum number of jaw movements will be applied, but it is very likely that some of those subfield MLCs will be closed inside the patient. So a lot of clinics don't like that. For add jaw movement, it is possible, again, here for the MLCs to close in the patient, but only if the subfield with a large MLC aperture that also contains closed leaves. So this will just minimize that. It'll add jaw movement, but it'll try to not allow the leaves to close inside the patient. And then for the always move jaws to match subfield MLC aperture, every jaw opening is made just large enough to fit the MLC. So as the apertures come down, the jaws move with it. All right. Thanks for joining us today. That concludes our video. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out at support@radformation.com and follow us on social media.